Welcome to episode 4 of the Mule Taming series, where we take two unhandled mules and teach them the basics of groundwork and domestication. Beginning with Brownie, per usual, she's definitely proven to be the more timid of the two so far. So, one thing I am starting to notice with Brownie is she's getting a little bit more difficult to lead. At first, she was giving to pressure pretty well. She was a little nervous, a little timid, but overall she wasn't bad. Now, because I'm working in a 20 by 20 stall, we are a bit limited on space. The only reason we've been working in her stall is because I don't quite feel confident enough to lead her to the round pen with no issues. The goal is to get her there over time. So, if you have an equine that is planting their feet when you're trying to teach them to lead, one of the ways that you can work with them on this is walking back and forth in front of them. So you can see what I'm doing is I apply some pressure with that lead rope, and then I walk in front of her off to the side. And I do this because this kind of throws her off balance a little bit and encourages her to take a step in whatever direction I'm facing. Over time, you can start increasing the criteria and asking for 2, 3, 4 steps, which you can see Brownie gave me a few more steps here. So I'm very proud of her for that. But that is one way that you can work or with an equine who tends to plant their feet when you're teaching them to lead. Next up, I'm going to start working on some lateral flexion with Brownie. You can see that I throw that lead rope over her back, and I start trying to ask her to give to pressure. I noticed in the past that she was a little bit stiff, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip the lead rope to the side of her halter and then start to apply that pressure. I don't have to apply a lot. I don't want her to feel like she has to brace against me. I'm just going to apply a little bit of pressure, and if she even just barely starts to turn her nose in my direction, I'm going to release that pressure. You can see that she kind of, is taking some steps. She's kind of trying to follow me. She's a little bit confused here. So I'm just going to continue to apply that pressure until she stops moving her hind end and just gives that nose, gives that head just slightly, which you can see that she does right here. So I'm going to give her some love, give her some pets, and then I'm going to switch the lead rope to the other side of the halter, and I'm going to try and do the same thing in the opposite direction. You can see here that she's a little bit more nervous about that. She goes to take off a little bit. So I'm just going to stay calm and just go back to asking her what I was originally doing. As she moves around a little bit, I'm just going to stand at her shoulder and continue to move around with her. And if she continues to get worked up, then we're going to take a break from it. But you can see right here, she goes to stop. She gives to that pressure just slightly. So I'm going to release that pressure every time she does. And then I'm going to give her a lot of pets and reinforce her for doing that. Then I'm going to move on to working on picking up her front feet. So you can see right here that as I go to slide my hand down her leg, she starts to move a little bit. And when the horse or mule starts to move when you're doing this, take your hand off, run it back up to their shoulder, and just continue to run it down their leg. I really don't want to ask Brownie to pick up her feet until she's comfortable with my hands on her feet. You can see right there she did pick up her foot for me, which I was extremely proud of. So we take a break and then I go right back to it. Every time I reach a certain point, she starts to lift her hoof just slightly. So I'm going to start seeing if I can maybe grab it and maybe hold it in the air for a few seconds. She did start to paw right there, which isn't something that I was too big a fan of. This is just her kind of communicating a little bit of discomfort, communicating that she's unsure about what we're doing, which is okay. I'd much rather Brownie communicate when she's getting a little worked up than freak out or panic or just immediately explode. So you can see right here, again, I'm starting to pick up that hoof. She holds it for me, and then I'm going to release that pressure. I'm going to ask the dog to get out of the round pen real quick, just because they're like right there. It's good for equines to learn how to work with dogs around them as long as the dogs aren't wreaking havoc. So you can see right here, she's pulling that leg away and I hold it. The second she stops trying to pull away, I release that pressure. And the goal here is to show her that if I pick up her hoof, she doesn't have to throw her leg or anything. Right there, she would let me pick up her hoof, hold it there, and she didn't try and throw her leg or anything crazy like that. Blondie starts to interfere with the camera, so I got to take a moment to reset it. As I go to work on Brownie's other front leg, she's a little bit more nervous about that one. She definitely seems to have a preferred side, which is okay. Most equines do. So I worked on it for about, 5-10 minutes. You didn't really get to see all of it. She gave me a small little pickup of the hoof where she let me hold her leg for a brief moment. So I'm going to move on to the next task, and we're going to work on some desensitizing. As I go to desensitize with the lunge whip, you can see that Brownie's just standing there. She's letting me put it on her back, her hind legs. I want to put it on her hind legs to see how she's going to respond, if she's going to kick out at something touching her hind legs. And you can see that she's not doing anything crazy like that. Both Brownie and Blondie from day one have been pretty okay with me desensitizing with random objects, even though it's just been the lunge whip and the lead rope. Over time, I'm going to start using different objects to desensitize, but overall, I haven't really had many issues with them so far on either side, which you can see I switched sides and Brownie's still just standing there. Now I'm going to work with Brownie a little bit on lunging. I'm going to point my hand in the direction I want her to go and apply some pressure behind her with the lunge whip. Now, if she just starts to take a few steps in a circle around me, I'm going to release that pressure. Ultimately, I want her to maintain a consistent circle around me without as many stops, but because I'm just teaching Brownie to lunge, right now it's not really a huge concern of mine. I'm just looking for just progress, right? I don't need a lot of progress, just a little bit of progress in the right direction. You always want to make sure that you're rewarding the try. You can see that even though she does stop from time to time, it's pretty easy for her to pick back up on that circle when I do continue to apply that pressure. So right here, I'm going to try and turn Brownie in the opposite direction. I ask her to come towards me a little bit, and then I'm going to do the same thing. Point with my hand, use some pressure with that lunge whip. I do kind of tap her shoulder with it a little bit, and she pretty much just lets me, and I'm just going to keep trying to hold that pressure on her until she starts to go in that circle around me. You can see that every once in a while she starts to give me those steps, so I drop my hand, drop the lunge whip, and then when she stops, I ask her to do it again. Here she is, again, she's lunging beautifully. She's actually doing a great job. I start to step in front of her drive line to ask her to stop. She stops wonderfully. I don't really have to do much, and then I'm going to apply some pressure and see if I can get her to come towards me a little bit more, which she does. I'm just going to end the session giving Brownie lots of love and attention, showing her that she did a good job. Even though both Brownie and Blondie are pretty comfortable with humans, it's always good to continue giving them lots of love, pets, attention, even treats too, just so that they can continue to associate humans with positive, pleasurable stimuli rather than super scary random things. Moving on to Miss Blondie, we're going to start Blondie's session with some lateral flexion. You can see here that I'm starting to apply that pressure just like I did with Brownie. I'm just trying to get her to turn that head around and give to that pressure. You can see that she does it very well. She doesn't really put up much of a fight. So I'm going to switch to the other side and pretty much just do the exact same thing. It's important to remember that when you are training equines, that what you do to one side, you do to the other. If I want her to flex her head to the right, then I also want her to flex it to the left. You can see as I'm trying to ask her to flex to the right, she gave me a little bit more trouble. She started to move around a bit, so I just stayed at her shoulder. I'm going to continue holding that pressure until she gives with her nose and just turns her head in the way that I'm asking her to do it. She does it very slightly right there, so I'm going to pet her, and then I'm going to go back to working on her front feet. So you can see that with Blondie, she picks up her front feet very well. She actually lets me hold them, mess around with them. So those are good things because in the very, very near future, the goal is to get both of these girls trimmed because their hooves are quite bad just because they haven't really been handleable. I go to switch sides and pick up the other front hoof, and she does wonderfully. Again, lets me mess with it and play around with it, so super proud of her for that. Moving on to the hind legs, for safety purposes, I'm going to use a lead rope. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand at her shoulder. I'm going to very slowly reach as far as I can to work that lead rope around her leg. You can see right here, she kind of starts to push over me a little bit. I do jerk on that lead rope a little bit just to try and get her to understand that if she's going to push over me like that, there is going to be some sort of a negative stimulus applied so that she hopefully continues to not repeat the behavior and it decreases the chances of it repeating. So here she is. She's starting to stand a lot calmer. So again, I'm going to reach myself all the way back there, try and get that lead rope around that hind leg, and I'm just going to wrap it around the fetlock once. And I'm just going to do this so that I can work on pressure and release, having her pick up her hind legs. One big thing that I have learned with mules over the years is that when they want to kick, they're quick and they're accurate. And so by using a lead rope, this is a way where I can stand at her shoulder, I can work with her on picking up her hind legs without being right in the line of fire. And if she is going to kick out, she's either going to kick the panel or the lead rope or something else like that. So you can see right here, I apply some pressure with that lead rope, and I just want her to pick up that leg. And every time she picks up that leg, I'm going to release that pressure. Because you cannot see very well from this angle, I'm going to speed things up a little bit and show you guys the exact same process, but on the other side, because I was able to get footage of it from a different angle. Here we are again. I slowly work my way to her hind end. I'm reaching as far as I can, staying out of the line of fire so I can get that lead rope just around her leg. And then I'm going to move it just right below her fetlock. And then I'm going to stand at her shoulder and I apply some pressure with that lead rope. She picks up that leg. I release that pressure. And I'm just going to repeat this process. Over time, you can start to increase the criteria. I'll ask her to hold her hind leg up for longer periods of time. And eventually the goal is to be able to touch her hind legs with my hands as well rather than needing a lead rope. But right now it's just an extra precaution for my own safety. Then I'm going to work on some desensitizing with the lunge whip. Just like with Brownie, Blondie doesn't really care about desensitizing with the lunge whip, whether it's over her back, on her hind legs, over on her other side. She doesn't really have any issues with desensitizing with the lunge whip. So overall, that is a good thing. After several minutes of desensitizing, I'm going to work with Blondie on lunging. So you can see that today she has a little bit more of a rough time with lunging. She keeps trying to turn and face me, which is okay. You're going to get to see me work through it a little bit, which is good. So right here, she's going off on that circle. In this corner is where, for some reason, she decides it's time to stop and face me. I don't know why. There's just something about this corner. So right here, I start to ask her to come towards me. She walks up into my space a little bit, so I give a couple small jerks on the lead rope just to continue trying to teach those boundaries and show her that she can't walk in my space. It's dangerous. So right here again, I go to ask her to lunge in that circle around me. She stops in this corner, so what I do is I grab the bottom of her halter, and then I'm going to use that to guide her head back onto the circle. Right here, she goes to pull that lead rope out of my hand, which is okay. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to like beat her or anything like some people do. She's just trying to communicate to me that she's unsure about this. She's not really a big fan of it today. And so I'm going to take this opportunity, just grab that lead rope, and I'm going to ask her to lunge in the opposite direction. Again, she starts to try and face me. I'm going to point, just apply some pressure behind her, and try and get her moving in that circle around me. She's doing a lot better in this direction than she was in the other direction. She still stops to face me for a moment. I do give her a little smack on the nose right there just because she was starting to come into my space a little bit. And right here again, I'm going to apply that pressure and get her to walk in that circle around me. She is doing better. I ask her to stop. We're going to take a moment and I'm going to give her some love and attention just as a way to kind of like try and calm her down, try and be like, hey, it's okay. You know, yes, I know that this is weird and scary today for some reason, but I'm going to give you some love, some pets just to show you that it is okay. After a break, I tried to get Blondie to go out in that circle again, and you can see that she's still struggling. Even though I'm trying to guide her head and apply some pressure from behind, she's still struggling. So I want to take this as a moment to remind you guys that sometimes it is okay to end on a bad note. Everyone always talks about always ending on a good note, and yes, that is most definitely ideal, but if the horse or the mule or whatever equine you might be working with is struggling, if they're getting worked up, if you're getting worked up, sometimes it is just good to end where you're at and call it a day from there, because if you don't call it a day from there and you continue to push and you continue to try and make progress when they're not really in a position to make progress, all you're going to do is stress them out. All you're going to do is ruin the progress that you have made so far, and so sometimes if you have to end on a bad note, end on a bad note.